I never imagined I'd become the villain in someone else's sob story, but here we are. My name's Jason, 35. I'm a property owner with a portfolio of homes I spent over a decade building from the ground up. Not inherited, not gifted, just good old-fashioned sweat sacrifices and smart choices. My wife and I started from absolutely nothing, just two broke college kids with a dream and a shared hatred of being broke. We flipped our first house using a student loan refund check, living on instant noodles and secondhand furniture. Every wall we painted, every tile we laid, it all built the life we have now. Today we own several properties across our hometown, each one a monument to the nights we worked while others partied. One of those homes was rented out to a tenant named Brianna. She's 41, a single mom with a daughter around 18. I'd met her years ago when she was struggling after a rough divorce. Her ex bailed when their daughter Maya was just a baby. I felt for her. So when she applied for one of my rentals, a cozy 3-bedroom near the local high school, I offered her a reduced rate. It meant I made almost no profit, but it felt like the right thing to do. Over the years, Brianna was a decent tenant. Paid on time, kept the place clean. We weren't friends, but we had a good rapport. She'd text if something needed fixing, I'd show up with my toolbox and a smile. That was it. Until one conversation flipped our dynamic upside down. A few months back, she asked to talk. I assumed it was about the dishwasher that had been acting up. Instead, she poured us both coffee and hit me with a request that felt like a sucker punch to my gut. "Jason," she said gently, "Maya got accepted into Emerson College." "Wow, that's amazing," I replied, genuinely impressed. "Emerson's no joke." She nodded, eyes shining. "The tuitions? It's a lot. We've applied for aid scholarships, everything, but it barely makes a dent." I braced myself for what I assumed was coming, a temporary pause in rent or help finding another job. But what she said next, "I was hoping maybe you'd consider selling this house, the one I'm living in. Use that money to help fund Maya's education." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. I mean, who says that? "You want me to sell my property? To pay for your daughter's college?" She nodded. "Just this one. It's in a great location. You could make a good profit. You and your wife are doing well. Maybe you could spare it, just this once." I stared at her, blinking. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I couldn't believe she was serious. "Brianna, this house isn't just a house to me. It's a piece of everything I've worked for. I'm sorry Maya's scholarship didn't cover more, but I'm not in a position to sell it. Not for anyone." She looked genuinely stunned. As if she thought I'd say yes, as if my refusal was some moral failing. Her tone shifted. "You're in a position to help. You could do this. You're just choosing not to." "Correct," I said flatly, "because it's not my responsibility." That should have been the end of it. But no, it was just the beginning of a full-blown storm. I figured once I said no, that would be it. We'd return to the usual rhythm, her paying rent, me handling repairs, and both of us pretending the awkward conversation never happened. But Brianna had other plans. Within a week, the rent didn't show up. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she forgot. Maybe it was a glitch. I sent a polite reminder. No response. Another week passed. Nothing. I finally called and she picked up, sounding irritated, like I was the problem. "I thought we were going to revisit the idea," she said. The house. The college situation. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a one-time thing. She genuinely believed I owed her this. "There's no revisiting, Brianna," I said. "It's not happening. You need to pay your rent or we'll have to go through the official channels." That's when she hung up. And just like that, it started. The passive-aggressive messages, the delays, the silence. Then she stopped paying rent altogether. I gave her formal notice. She ignored it. When I stopped by to deliver paperwork, she refused to answer the door, even though I could hear the TV blaring inside. I didn't want to be the guy who escalated things, but I wasn't about to let my property become a charity case just because someone felt entitled. My wife Leah stayed patient through all of this, but even she started getting uneasy when neighbors began acting differently. Some stopped waving, others gave half-hearted nods. Then I heard whispers, literally from people walking past our driveway. Things like, "Must be nice to be rich and heartless," or "You'd think he'd do something for a struggling single mom." I couldn't believe it. Was she seriously going around painting me as some kind of villain? Turns out, yeah, she was. A friend from our community center texted me a screenshot one night. It was a public Facebook post from Brianna. A long, tear-filled rant about how her daughter's future was being destroyed because her wealthy landlord refused to show compassion. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Anyone who knew her or me or even the property could figure it out. The post ended with a line that burned through me. "I just hope one day people like him realize that money can't buy empathy." The likes and comments poured in. Neighbors, former coworkers, strangers. all of them offering hugs, prayers, sympathy, and not one of them knew the truth. I felt like I was drowning in a story I didn't write. A villain in someone else's carefully crafted fiction. Leah was furious, not just about the rent, but the lies. We've both bent over backward to help people over the years. We've donated, volunteered, even housed a friend going through a rough divorce rent-free for 6 months. But Brianna had decided this was the moment to draw a moral line at our expense. Leah tried reaching out. She called Brianna to clear the air, hoped for a calm, rational conversation. Brianna didn't give her one. She doubled down, accused Leah of enabling my greed, and said we were destroying her daughter's dream for no reason other than spite. That was the moment I realized Brianna wasn't just hoping I'd change my mind, she was trying to pressure me into it. She wanted to make keeping my property harder than giving it up. But the real gut punch came a few days later. Our son Caleb, he's 11, came home with tears in his eyes. He said some kids at school were calling me a cheapskate, a fraud. Said their parents had told them I was rich, but too selfish to help a kid go to college. I had no words, just this awful gut-wrenching silence as I looked at my son and wondered how the hell this had become our life. That night I knew I had to do something. Not for Brianna, not even for me, but for my family. Because this wasn't just a personal disagreement anymore, it was turning into a smear campaign. I reached out to a lawyer, explained the situation. He listened patiently, then told me, "Jason, you're being defamed. This isn't just a landlord issue, it's personal and it's public." That's when we drafted the cease and desist letter. Nothing aggressive, just formal, firm. A clear warning to stop spreading false information or face the consequences. The letter was delivered 2 days later. Brianna didn't answer the door, but I know she got it because the next morning I woke up to a text. "I can't believe you're threatening legal action. This is all just a huge misunderstanding. Can't we just talk before it goes too far?" I didn't reply, because it had already gone too far. And yet, something told me she wasn't done. The cease and desist letter was supposed to be the reset button. I figured once things got real legal, real Brianna would back off, rethink her tactics, maybe even apologize, but I underestimated how far someone will go when they've convinced themselves they're the hero in a battle only they created. Within days, she went from passive-aggressive to full-blown aggressive, her next move. A letter from her own attorney. And it wasn't just a counter to the cease and desist, it was filled with accusations that twisted reality so hard I had to read it 3 times just to believe it. She claimed I had been exploiting her financial situation, that I was charging her excessive rent despite knowing she was a struggling single mother, and had caused her emotional distress by refusing reasonable financial support for her daughter's education. Let that sink in. She was claiming that I, the guy who had subsidized her rent for nearly a decade, was gouging her. And her idea of reasonable was me selling a 6-figure property. My lawyer, Rob, was as stunned as I was. He asked if I had documentation proving I'd given her a reduced rate. I did. Every lease renewal, every bank transfer, every maintenance request logged without charge. We had years' worth of receipts showing she'd been paying significantly less than market value. Rob nodded and said, "Good. Because this isn't just petty anymore. She's trying to build a legal case around a moral guilt trip." At this point, I knew we were heading to court. While Rob prepared the response and gathered documentation, things in our neighborhood took a darker turn. People who used to wave suddenly avoided eye contact. A few unfollowed us on social media. One woman even had the audacity to confront Leah at the grocery store. "It must be nice having everything and choosing not to help," she muttered loud enough for others to hear. Leah didn't respond. She didn't need to. But when she got home, she looked so shaken that I wanted to drive back and give that woman a piece of my mind. The tipping point came 2 weeks before our first court date. Brianna posted another rant on Facebook, this time naming me outright. She tagged me, tagged the neighborhood group, even tagged the university Maya had been accepted to. It was a long, rambling post about injustice motherhood and how the wealthy stay wealthy by stepping on the necks of the working class. She used screenshots of my business website to paint me as this corporate slumlord, even though I don't own a single apartment complex. Just homes. Ones I maintained myself, ones I worked for. My inbox flooded with hate messages. Some people even left 1-star reviews on my business page without ever renting from me. So we leaned in. Rob filed the official defamation suit. And that was when Brianna, clearly realizing this was serious, brought out what she thought was her trump card. In court, she produced a witness, a family friend who claimed they had overheard a conversation where I promised to sell her the house for Maya's college fund. I was stunned. My stomach actually dropped. It was like watching a stranger narrate a dream I'd never had. Rob stood up calm as ever and started dismantling the testimony piece by piece. He asked the witness for specifics, date, time, setting. The guy stumbled. Said it happened a few months ago in the front yard. Rob pulled up weather reports showing it had been pouring that day. No outdoor chats. Then he produced text records showing Brianna first mentioned college funding weeks after the so-called conversation. The timeline didn't add up, and neither did the story. To seal it, we introduced emails between Brianna and me from that same period. Nothing in them suggested I had ever agreed to any financial help. If anything, they showed how she escalated things after I said no. But Rob wasn't done. He brought in comparative rental receipts from other properties in the neighborhood. Every single tenant on that street was paying significantly more than Brianna. Some were paying almost double. We had maintenance logs proving I never charged her for anything beyond what the lease required. Plumbing, lawn service, new appliances, all covered by me. Rob laid it out clearly for the judge. This man gave her a discounted home, fixed her appliances without charge, and never raised rent in nearly 10 years. And now she wants the court to believe he promised to give it all up, based on a neighbor's foggy memory and a Facebook rant. But the part that hit the hardest was when we addressed the impact on my family. Rob showed the court screenshots of Brianna's posts, then messages from people harassing me online, then the note from Caleb's school counselor about bullying. The judge's expression shifted. I could see it in her eyes. The narrative was falling apart. And the truth, the real quiet truth, was starting to sink in. When Brianna took the stand, she was emotional. I'll give her that. She cried, talked about raising Maya alone, about working 2 jobs, about wanting a better life for her daughter. And you know what? I don't doubt any of that. But that still didn't make her entitled to my property. That still didn't mean she could lie, manipulate, and weaponize public sympathy against me. When she was asked directly if she had any written proof of my promise to sell the house, she admitted no. Just conversations, just a feeling that he'd come through. That was her case. And when she stepped down, the courtroom was silent. Not the dramatic kind of silence like in movies, but the quiet, drained kind. The kind where everyone's realizing the damage one person's sense of entitlement can do to another person's entire life. By the time we reached the final day of testimony, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but in that soul-tired way where everything feels heavier. The courtroom lights, the endless paperwork, even the sound of someone flipping through legal pads behind me, it all felt like weight pressing down. I hadn't expected to end up here. Honestly, who does? You rent a house, help someone out, and years later you're sitting across from them while their lawyer accuses you of emotional manipulation. I looked over at Brianna. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked drained, but not sorry, just frustrated that things weren't going her way. The moment the judge entered, everything slowed down. Time felt thick. You could feel the tension between us even without looking. She sat upright, scanned the room, and began reading the verdict. Her voice was steady, clear, unshaken. After reviewing the presented documentation, rental agreements, financial history, and witness testimonies, this court finds no credible evidence that the defendant agreed to sell the property in question to the plaintiff. Furthermore, the court finds that defamatory content was published online by the plaintiff with the intent to damage the defendant's personal and professional reputation. I exhaled, quietly. No fist pump, no sigh of relief, just a slow, grounding breath. The judge continued. The plaintiff, Ms. Brianna Reed, is ordered to remove all defamatory online content related to Mr. Jason Ayers and issue a written retraction. Ms. Reed is also responsible for all unpaid rent as well as damages related to public defamation. A restraining order will be enacted barring any direct or indirect public commentary about Mr. Ayers or his family. My lawyer, Rob, leaned toward me and whispered, "We did it." But I wasn't smiling. Not yet. I looked over at Brianna. Her face was blank. Not surprised, not angry, just flat. Like even she knew this was coming and had already emotionally checked out. Then my eyes fell on Maya sitting behind her mother. She wasn't crying either. She looked at me for a long second, and for the first time in months, there was no accusation in her eyes. Just something else, maybe confusion, maybe regret, I couldn't tell. After court, I stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, and for the first time in a long while, I felt still. Not happy, not vindicated, just still. Like the storm had passed and left everything in an eerie silence. Leah came up behind me and took my hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That's the thing about people who truly know you. They don't need words to understand your exhaustion. Later that week, Brianna was served her official notices. One was the final rent demand. The other was the formal eviction. She had 30 days to move out. I didn't want to watch her leave, didn't even want to be around when it happened. Not out of cruelty, but because watching someone hit rock bottom, even someone who dragged you through hell, doesn't feel good. It's not satisfying, it just feels like watching someone drown in a pool they jumped into with their own ego as a flotation device. A few neighbors who had believed her story reached out afterward. Some apologized directly. Others offered awkward half smiles and shallow small talk like their guilt was a pebble they couldn't quite shake out of their shoe. I didn't hold grudges, but I didn't forget either. The worst part? My kids. Caleb still flinched when someone brought up the house. Our daughter Natalie had stopped inviting friends over because she was scared they'd heard the rumors. We had to do real damage control. Meetings with the school, conversations with teachers, late-night talks reminding them that sometimes people lie when they're desperate, but that doesn't mean you let them break you. Then out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from Maya. I didn't even know she had my number. It was short, careful, but genuine. Hi, Mr. Ayers. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know my mom went too far. I didn't understand it all until after court. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at the screen for a while. The words were small typed quickly, but they carried weight. She was young. She didn't ask for any of this, and somewhere along the line, she probably believed what her mom told her about me, about her future, about who was standing in the way. I wrote back, "Thank you. I wish you the best with school. Take care of yourself." She replied once more, "Just one sentence I will, and I'll earn it this time." That part hit me, because it told me she'd learned something her mom still hadn't. A few weeks later, Brianna moved out. Quietly. No drama. No more posts. Just a silent departure like she hoped no one would notice. The house sat empty for a while. I couldn't bring myself to rent it out again immediately. It felt like walking into a room still echoing with the last argument. But eventually we cleaned it up, repainted the walls, replaced the carpets, started fresh. And something in me shifted too. I stopped feeling like I owed people explanations. I stopped tiptoeing around what I'd earned. Because that's the thing no one tells you when you've worked for everything you have, you don't owe anyone an apology for protecting it. 6 months passed like pages torn from a calendar. Fast, chaotic, and strangely quiet. After the dust settled, life started finding its rhythm again. The community moved on. The gossip dried up. Our kids slowly regained their normal. Caleb joined the school soccer team. Natalie brought friends over again. Leah and I took a weekend trip, our first in what felt like forever. For once, the silence in our house wasn't awkward or loaded. It was peaceful. But peace, I've learned, never arrives without its shadows. Sometimes it shows up wearing an old memory or an unexpected knock. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The kind where the sky looks like wet concrete and the world moves a little slower. I was working from home going over property spreadsheets when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands, got up and opened it. There she was, Maya. Her hair was tied back, her backpack soaked from the drizzle, and her eyes tired but focused. She didn't flinch. Didn't shift. Just stood there grounded like she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind. "Hey," she said softly. I nodded. "Hey, do you have a minute?" I stepped aside and gestured toward the hallway. She followed me into the living room, her sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. Leah looked up from the couch, surprised but said nothing. She just gave me a questioning glance. I answered with a tiny shake of my head. "Let me handle it." We sat. No small talk, no weather chatter. Maya looked around the room like it was familiar but distant. Like something she once saw through a window but never entered. "I just wanted to say a few things. Then I'll go," she said. I nodded, giving her space to speak. "I know my mom put you and your family through hell. I know she crossed every line imaginable. And for a long time I didn't really understand how wrong it was. I believed her. I thought, I don't know, that maybe you could afford to help. That maybe you were just being cold. But I get it now. That house wasn't just walls and floors. It was your work, your life, your family's future." I didn't interrupt. Her words weren't rehearsed. They were raw, honest. When we moved out, Mom was furious. Not just at you, but at everyone. The world. The system. Me. She wouldn't say it out loud, but I could tell she blamed me for it all falling apart. Like I'd dared to dream too big and dragged her down with me. She paused, breathing slow, trying to steady herself. "I started at community college. It's not Emerson, but it's something. I'm working 2 jobs. It's not glamorous, but I'm surviving, and I'm learning. I'm studying business, actually." That part made me smile without meaning to. I guess I wanted to understand what makes people like you. Build things. Protect them. Work quietly without needing applause. Her eyes shimmered for a moment, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached into her backpack and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. It's not money. It's just a letter. Something I wrote a while ago. I never knew if I'd have the courage to give it to you. I took it carefully. She didn't ask me to open it right away. I know you probably don't want to hear anything about my mom again, and I get that. But I wanted you to know I don't want to be like her. I want to be better. I want to earn what I get. And someday when I own my first apartment, or even just rent one, I'm going to remember everything you said in court. About boundaries. About dignity. I finally spoke, my voice low. You're not your mother, Maya. Don't carry her choices like they're yours. She nodded, lips pressed tight. I'm sorry she hurt your kids. And your wife. And you. I'm sorry I stood behind her when I should have questioned things sooner. I thanked her. Genuinely. Not because I needed an apology, but because hearing those words after everything brought a strange kind of closure I didn't know I needed. When she stood up to leave, I offered to drive her, but she declined. I'm walking, she said. Part of rebuilding, I guess. I watched her disappear into the misty sidewalk. That night, after the kids went to bed, I opened the letter. It wasn't long, just 2 pages. But it held more weight than a legal ruling ever could. She wrote about the first time she moved into our property, how it was the nicest home she'd ever lived in. How her mom had cried the first night, not because she was happy, but because she was scared they'd lose it. She wrote about the guilt she carried watching her mother unravel and realizing too late that desperation doesn't excuse destruction. And in the final line she said, I want you to know that everything you did mattered, even when people tried to twist it. You gave us a chance. I see that now. Thank you. I showed the letter to Leah. She read it in silence, then looked at me and said, she's going to be okay. I believed that. And strangely, I felt okay too. The months that followed were quiet, but not empty. It's strange how healing doesn't always show up with fanfare or milestones. Sometimes it's just your kid laughing again at dinner, or your wife leaving the house without that edge of tension in her shoulders. Sometimes it's walking past the house you almost lost not to foreclosure, but to someone else's desperation and feeling nothing but stillness. Not anger, not fear, just quiet. We rented the place again eventually, to a retired couple who wanted to be closer to their grandkids. Kind people. Respectful, they paid rent on time and even left thank you notes after every visit from our maintenance guy. And yet every time I visited that property, I noticed something. Not the chipped brick near the mailbox or the way the grass grew faster on the left side. No, it was the absence of noise, that heavy silence Brianna had left behind. For the longest time it lingered, but slowly, week by week, it faded. Like the house exhaled. Maya kept in touch. Not often, just small things. An email here, a message there. Once she sent a photo of her standing in front of the campus library at her new college. Not Emerson, but hers. She looked proud. Not because someone handed her anything, but because she fought for it. And that kind of pride, the kind born from grit and humility, is the kind that sticks. We never heard from Brianna again. And honestly, I hope she found some sort of peace too. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because bitterness is a prison people build for themselves. I've seen what it does. How it twists truth, drowns logic, and makes people burn bridges they didn't even realize they still needed. Her story could have gone differently, but she made her choices. And I made mine. And mine was this: I would not apologize for building a life I worked for. I would not let someone's need rewrite my story. And I would not carry guilt that didn't belong to me. For a while I struggled with the idea of whether I did the right thing. Not legally, I knew the law was on my side. But morally, spiritually, did I fail a chance to help someone? Could I have done more? But then I remembered something my grandfather once said, sitting on his creaky porch after a long day at the factory. I must have been 10. He looked at his hands, scarred, cracked, calloused, and told me if you give away the ground beneath your feet every time someone says they're falling soon, you won't have anywhere to stand. That stuck with me. Because giving is good. Compassion is good. But giving doesn't mean setting yourself on fire so someone else can stay warm. There's a difference between helping and sacrificing your foundation. And in this world where people love a villain, they can throw stones at the line between kindness and self-erasure gets blurry. I chose to draw that line. Not out of greed, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. And that's a lesson I hope my kids carry with them long after this story becomes just another chapter in our family's book. Caleb still asks questions sometimes. Why did she do it? Why didn't you just help her? Was Maya mad at us? And I answer honestly. Not because I have to, but because he deserves that honesty. She was scared, I told him once. And sometimes when people get scared, they stop thinking clearly. They grab at anything, even things that don't belong to them. He nodded quiet, thoughtful, but we're okay now. I smiled. Yeah, buddy, we're okay, because we stayed true, and truth always finds its way. And it does. Not always quickly, not always cleanly, but it does. That's what I've learned. That truth, like water, finds its path through the rocks. That strength isn't about never bending, it's about knowing when to stand. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to let someone else's chaos become your own. We're good now. We've grown, we've healed, and every day we wake up, drink coffee, laugh about nonsense, and walk into our home knowing it stands not just on land and wood and brick, but on boundaries, values, and the kind of dignity no one can evict. Story 2, I was twice misdiagnosed by the doctor, and I was hurt during needless surgery. I've discovered that I'm not the first patient he's hurt, and I now have nerve damage. My life's most agonizing story is this one, the one about which I am encouraged to write a book, the one that sent me to the ER and for which I am still partially in denial. In 18 months, more than 50 times. And it all began with an MRI reading that was way too inaccurate. To give you a little background, I began experiencing intense, incapacitating migraines in the summer of 2021. Following my second dose of COVID, I had tried and failed several different therapy drugs by the time I saw this doctor. He requested an MRI. He diagnosed me with an uncommon illness known as a CSF leak, but the results were normal. I didn't know this was untrue when I made my surgical appointment. I was not leaking. The procedure simply made me worse. By that time, he really acknowledged there was no leak, and my suffering was continuously minimized and disregarded. Because I wasn't giving birth, an angiography was ordered by the physician. It was typical. However, he gave me another diagnosis of cerebral hypertension and gave me a prescription for blood thinners. I got so sick that I was unable to eat, go to the bathroom, or even get out of bed. I had no idea that such misery ever existed. I started going to the ER in between all of this. I had never in my life encountered such sexist and offensive remarks before. How I was a drug seeker, or how I was being dramatic, etc. Compared to the male doctors, the female medical staff treated me considerably more kindly. Eventually, I would find out that I had suffered serious injuries after being misdiagnosed twice. I also found out that this doctor has heard this before. Even though he knew he was misdiagnosing me, he went ahead and did it. I understand how absurd that may sound. I found out through medical records that he openly refused to allow me view something he never imagined I would obtain. Since that procedure, I have changed. I feel as though a piece of my spirit has passed away and I've become resentful and morbid. The blood thinners were slowly killing me, and he never diagnosed me with anything. This story's lesson is to speak up for yourself as a patient, no matter what you may be going through. It might save your life. I hope nobody here has ever gone through something like that. For heaven's sake, I'm not downplaying childbirth. I included it because the doctor told me this. Anyone outraged by that part, please stop being so rude. I am aware that childbirth is terrible. I'm not having children because of this. At Edit 2, I sincerely appreciate all of your support. Thank you. It has great significance. I'll take a moment to try to address any queries, comments, and anecdotes. Many thanks to all of you. You're amazing. One update. First and foremost, I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who provided support, guidance, and stories of people who have gone through similar experiences or dealt with medical professionals, thereby reducing your suffering. I sincerely apologize. I am so grateful to everyone in this community, which is truly incredible. This is something that still bothers me every day, so I wanted to provide an update. I have some good news. I think I've finally truly found the appropriate lawyer. She wants to investigate having my old doctor's license canceled through the state medical board in addition to helping me. I've been hearing more and more stories concerning this doctor's treatment of other patients. I've even had conversations with some of them, and it makes me feel terrible to know that they have also been harmed by a man who aspires to be like Dr. Death. For some news, that is a little bittersweet. I just took a test and found out how severely the nerve damage is. To help with my symptoms, I'm considering having nerve decompression surgery on my head, skull, and brain. I'm praying for the best, but it's a difficult few weeks of recuperation in the hospital, and I have numerous medicine sensitivities. Many thanks to all of you here. You guys are amazing. The majority of the comments on Update 2 were very encouraging. However, I would like to address a few of the points raised. My tale is authentic. It was never phony. It isn't, and never will be phony. I hope it is. This narrative wasn't made up because I supposedly detested males, as some people have said. Men are not something I despise. Although I detest some of their actions, I would really like for someone to confront me if I were acting in such a manner. It's a shared emotion. I don't think anyone would tolerate my rude behavior. My diagnoses and medical records were among the topics discussed. I'll do my best to be succinct. There is incriminating material in my medical records. These data include two of my accurate diagnoses, on paper and verbally. However, the diagnoses and treatment plans were very different. I received treatment for problems I didn't have. Yes, I am aware that cerebral hypertension cannot be treated with blood thinners. I was prescribed blood thinners, but normally it's Dimox. That is to say, my previous physician was aware that he was misdiagnosing me. He knew very well. He is not a moron. Most likely he is a narcissist. Early this year, I started experiencing migraines and hemiplegia. I have no idea why, and I might never understand cluster headaches either. What caused them is unknown to me. Since it is still ongoing, some of this material is ambiguous. More is yet to be discovered. I'm seriously thinking of having the occipital nerves removed or having nerve decompression surgery. Since some people believe that I was just sharing stories from women online, and even on Reddit, I discovered accounts of other patients, both men and women. My lawsuit will not involve these stories. I used them to determine whether my old doctor had a history of carelessness, and this turned out to be the case. Both men and women have suffered because of this doctor. He wasn't just hurting women, in my opinion. Let's go on to the brief update. The case is under progress. The likelihood of a trial is quite low. He has too much on me for a serious defense. Although I have hope, I find the whole situation to be quite emotional. Knowing that people believe I'm lying about my narrative hurts, but that's Reddit. I'm not going to spend hours upon hours trying to persuade strangers of my truth because they don't know me. They weren't present. We are grateful to everyone who has been supportive and kind. Thank you so much. After my case is resolved, I will provide one last update. I'm simply attempting to recover physically and mentally until then. Revise on May 3rd. Hello, everyone. All I wanted to do was share this without making it a wall of text. After what I thought was a migraine that had been going on for 7 days and counting, I was admitted to the hospital last night. To get people to take me seriously enough, I had to make a scene and possibly come across as a little crazy. I frequently receive odd looks and harsh remarks when I go to the emergency department. Perhaps it's because most people don't notice migraines. I'm getting off topic, though. Following what ended up being a 24-hour appointment with several specialists, the patient underwent imaging rounds, tours, infusions, and even lidocaine injections to the skull. I talked to a migraine expert. I've never done this before. I had never encountered a specialist in them until today. It was a lengthy conversation, but I felt hurt for the first time in what seems like years. A rare nerve condition that may become agonizing if left untreated was induced by my former doctor. My occipital nerves have scar tissue running down them, and I'm about to have a specialty surgery that very few doctors prescribe, and even fewer do. 3 years are needed for the operation to recover. By then, I will be 27 years old, having spent 6 years in all attempting to figure out what my previous doctor was really responsible for. I don't want to come across like a victim in this post. It serves as a reminder to everyone, but especially to women. Always get second views if a medical treatment plan you have been given seems off. Avoid finding yourself in my shoes. Because I trust in someone who intentionally harms his patients for financial gain and control, I will have difficulties for the rest of my life. A May 6, 2025 update. To everyone who left supportive comments, offered guidance, shared similar experiences, and offered words of encouragement, in addition to words of sadness, as well as to everyone who sent nice notes during my tale updates. With all of my heart, thank you. I am so thankful for everyone in this community, which is genuinely amazing. I had no idea that I would be sharing this kind of update so quickly. I wish I could say that this update is good, but it's not. I'll begin by stating unequivocally that all of my statements on this physician are accurate. My tale is real. The other testimony regarding him are accurate and supported by more than 10 inches of clear, tangible proof. It is appalling that this doctor has caused harm to others. I can't even begin to count the number of times I've sobbed because someone else shared a similar tale with me. I thought the lawyer was working on my behalf. He also misled me. He may be buddies with this doctor, and I have a suspicion that he knows him. I think this doctor is bribing folks to stay out of trouble with the law. No one has been willing to file a lawsuit against this one doctor, but I've never been told I didn't have a case. I can locate lawsuits against other doctors in public records. Not this one. I have only ever come across review after review that describes the atrocities this man has committed against other people. It all began in late 2020 when a woman probably attempted to sue but was turned down. Because of this man, she developed brain damage and required specialized brain recovery procedures. The reviews continue to pile up on top of one another. Some are really scary. I begin to cry once more. My diagnosis is final. I'm still dealing with the after effects of the blood thinners 3 years after the surgery that almost killed me. I was misled in order to get what I wanted. In my nightmares, I see this man chaining me to an operating table so he can complete the task he began. I have a panic attack every time I go to the doctor's office. I went to the ER more than 70 times due to the harm. My veins are shot, incapable of donating blood without passing out. Stubborn. When placed into the line throughout 4 treatments, it burns. I'm no longer afraid of needles, but the agony is getting worse as scar tissue obscures the veins to shield them. There are days when I just cry and ruminate. I may never really be free from the lies I was told, and the agony I will endure forever will serve as a reminder of that. My weight gained from all the steroids, my increased appetite, and the more than 30 drugs I tried and failed. I'm going to take a vacation from Reddit. I was granted disability benefits, but I need time to think things through and recover emotionally. The scars won't go away, even though I shouldn't. I have hope despite my fear of the impending surgery. This doctor continues to practice and cause harm. Although I am far from done, justice is something that is rarely seen in today's world. Until this man runs out of practice, I won't give up. I can't give up because I'm so furious with him. I'll figure out a way to make it happen for everyone, including myself. He's hurt. I haven't given up. I appreciate all of your support and assistance. The next tale. My daughter can't get her fiancé to marry her, so a friend dubbed me a gold digger. She later acknowledged that she has been trying to keep me from being a psalm. My daughter is 5 years old, and I am 35 years old. My spouses are 6 years old. She recently discovered our wedding book and has since developed a complete obsession with weddings and all things related to them. She has been questioning us a lot, including the reason for our marriage. We have been responding by saying that we adore one another and that we felt it was appropriate. We recently received an invitation from a friend to attend their 6th wedding anniversary celebration. I'm a part of a rather large female friendship group that began during our law school years along with the friend who was throwing the party. We're all married, have kids, are engaged, or in some other kind of connection. Mandy, 35F, is in a relationship with FAS and belongs to this buddy group. 38M. It's been nearly 8 years since Mandy and Bass first started dating. In spite of our gentle suggestions that he might not be serious about her and that they shouldn't be together, if they have different views on marriage, she insists that they are meant to be and that he will come to his senses at the party, which was attended by all the couples and children. For the past 5 years, Mandy has been telling us that she truly wants to get married, but Bass is so evasive about it that when it is brought up, he simply says, "It's just a piece of paper, and I don't need the government's approval to love you," on anything related to the wedding. After a while, Mandy starts talking to my daughter about school and other things. When my child sees Bass and Mandy together, he questions in a very awkward way, "Are you married? Why aren't you married? And when will you wear weavings?" I overheard the talk from a neighboring location and sought to shift the topic right away. Since I knew this was a sensitive topic for Mandy, I apologized. She kinda lashes out at my daughter after I made her apologize to Mandy for being inquisitive, adding, "Well, we aren't married because I truly love him and I'm not a gold digger, lol." For background, my husband is a highly successful architect and his family is wealthy. I am a first-generation law student, and my family is the reverse. I had told Mandy that I was anxious about what others would think of me when I met my husband's family because I was afraid they would think I was just with him for his money. After they discovered that I wasn't originally wealthy, I'm really successful in my line of work, I adore my husband, and I get along well with his family. However, I was aware that I was the target of the remark. She is the provider for her partner and has already made snide remarks about my ring's size, saying it appears too large and avaricious. She also plans to choose a different type when she and Bass are married. She has even hinted that my husband is ugly, and when I revealed my pregnancy, she said that I only became pregnant so early in our marriage because I wanted to have a child to cement that generational riches. Every time I dismissed it with a kind of giggle and went on. With the exception of the last remark, which I firmly shut down and somewhat frightened her into not saying anything more until this party. The room fell awkwardly silent, as everyone else in the room heard the talk and understood the significance of that sentence. Since the party was coming to a close, we just left and said the host farewell. About 2 days have passed since then. She texted me today to suggest that she should apologize since people were telling her that what she said wasn't cool. She apologized very half-heartedly and claimed that if I had just stopped my child from talking earlier, she probably wouldn't have said anything. This broke the camel's back as my daughter was told, and I replied that I wanted space from her and to never trash talk to my child. Fortunately, my other friends supported me when I informed them about the text and called her out for being a bitch. Since many of her friends were first-generation students with equally successful relationships, I believe they were taking advantage of her. She urged me to get folks off her back in a somewhat more heartfelt follow-up apology. Although he is just as angry, my husband suggested that we give her a break because she is radiating fear and is in a terrible relationship. Although I knew she was having a hard time with bars and could have definitely had more control over my daughter earlier, the remark nevertheless made me feel very bad. Aita, then. Updated on May 4th, 2025. Since I was genuinely just going to ignore Mandy for a bit and move on from the whole issue, I initially had no intention of providing an update on the situation. However, after reading some of the comments, I made the decision to speak with my daughter. Because there are many different kinds of people, there are also many different kinds of relationships. My husband and I sat her down and discussed this with her. We assured her that it's acceptable for some people to choose marriage while others do not, and how marriage is a significant commitment to another person, not just a wedding. Additionally, we stated that it is not demeaning to have a long and fulfilling relationship without being married. We also assured her that we would support her no matter what, and that it is ultimately up to her to decide whether or not she wishes to get married in the future. She seemed to understand, and she still enjoys weddings and frequently looks at my husband and I's wedding album, but thankfully it calmed down a little. We then explained that while being inquisitive and asking questions is a good thing, marriage and weddings can be very personal for many people, and if they don't want to talk about it, to respect that. I received conflicting thoughts in the comments, so I was still not entirely sure what to do about Mandy. Some of the questions that resonated with me were, if she doesn't like me, why are we even friends? I didn't want to bring up the subject again, but I recently learned that I am expecting my second child. After my initial happiness with my husband was somewhat overshadowed, I became depressed as I considered this drama and how I just wanted people who fully supported me in my life. I finally messaged Mandy to ask if we could have coffee together. We had been friends for a long time, I informed her when we first met, but her previous remarks about me were hurtful. Even if I apologized for my daughter's remarks at the party, they were nonetheless unacceptable. I also said I only wanted her to be happy and sorry if I ever came across as critical or disapproving of her relationships with other people. And I fully back her if she is. After telling her about the pregnancy, I informed her that it was her right to reject me, but all I wanted was support from those around me during this time in my life. After considering it, she genuinely expressed regret for her remarks and acknowledged that they were cruel. She believed that she was constantly under pressure from her family to lead a typical family life, even if she didn't want to and was content with theirs. Although I was glad that we were able to come to some form of understanding, things went south. She admitted that she started saying hurtful things on purpose to keep me from being a stay-at-home mom. She explained because I was perplexed. After having children, the other two women in the group followed suit, and she foresaw that I would follow suit. In an attempt to keep me from quitting my job to care for my children, she began subtly criticizing me after I got engaged. I told her that was fucking absurd since I've never once stated that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and that I have always loved my career. She said that was a nice thing, but she assumed I would because I talk about my daughter a lot and she believes I need my husband's approval too much. I told her that she was being cruel and that although I had valued our friendship for a long time, I needed to consider whether it was worth preserving. Now, with my head spinning, I'm composing this in my car. Although I no longer want to be her friend, I'm afraid that because of the impending kid, other people would pressure me into it. How should I proceed? A second update May 11th, 2025. Hi everyone, I've concluded that the stress isn't worth it, therefore this is the final time I'll provide an update. I've been announcing my pregnancy to my close friends and family via the phone and in person over the past several days. Now almost everyone in my circle is aware. No one has inquired about any of the Mandy-related matters because everyone has been interested in discussing the baby. Fortunately, I just got to see one of my best pals from the group. She was as shocked as I was when I told her what had happened the last time I saw Mandy. Even though I didn't particularly want to hear about it, I informed her that I would be taking some time away from Mandy and the entire turmoil to concentrate on the pregnancy. I got some fresh information about Mandy and Bass from my pal. They seem to be going through everything and are on the verge of ending their relationship. Bass has temporarily returned to living with his mother because things have become so horrible. In a serious conversation with Bass about marriage, Mandy assured him she was fine with never getting married, according to my buddy. FaZe then became really upset and accused her of cheating because he believes that she must have lost interest in him and that there must be someone else because she no longer wants to get married. This is foolish. They're spending some time apart because he doesn't seem to be receptive to reason. Although I'm sad for her, I'm not thinking about it anymore, and I hope Mandy finds happiness. I'm doing well with my family, concentrating on surviving these early stages of pregnancy and enjoying time with those that are there for me. I appreciate all of your advice. Story 3. After their mother left them, I raised my daughters by myself for 20 years. Then when their mom's wealthy new husband offered to adopt them, they told me I wasn't their biological father. Elias is my name. This whole thing really started a couple years ago, and I'm 54 now. For nearly 3 decades, it was the same manufacturing facility where I worked. Reached a mid-level position after starting at the bottom. When our daughters Amara and Callista were little, my wife Leona departed. Amara was 10 years old. Callista was 7 years old. Leona. I suppose she wasn't suited for a tranquil family life. Her visits were everywhere after she went. She would occasionally arrive beaming and full of promises. At other times, it might be months before we heard from her. When she did show up, the girls were frequently disappointed because something she had promised didn't materialize. Thus, I raised them primarily. Despite my imperfections, I was always there. I hoped their life would be better than mine. More options in life. I grew raised in a somewhat working-class household. We have a roof over our heads and food on the table, but not much more. I was adamant that my daughters would have extras to ensure they had everything they required. I put in a lot of work, my primary position at the plant, next part-time work, repairing things for others. A little advice based on my knowledge of plants. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. It allowed me to send children to a reputable private school year after year. To prepare them for college, SAT tutors were required. Then came the expense of attending college. Amara spent a semester studying abroad in Spain. With her first car, Callista required assistance. I talked about it. We didn't lead affluent lives, by no means. I live in a tiny house. For 15 years, I drove the same old vehicle. Compared to the original denim, my work jeans had more patches, occasionally. The girls, however, were never without. They had all they required to concentrate in class. It's a good beginning to have a somewhat typical childhood. When they were in their early 20s, things began to shift. More regularly, Leona returned to the scene. She had gotten married again. Sterling was the name of her new husband. He owned his own company, drove a luxury car, wore pricey outfits, and was successful, or at least he looked the part. With him, Leona was different, I suppose more refined. Sterling took care to engage with Callista and Amara. He secured Amara a position as an intern at a business. He put Callista in touch with a local agency because he knew he had some contacts. I initially believed that this may be beneficial to them. More individuals watching out for them. Then, though, I noticed a change. The girls started to grow apart. The calls became shorter. They had a lot going on. Usually when Sterling and Leona are involved, they began discussing Sterling's lovely home. My tranquil life, my small area, the folks he knew. In contrast, it probably seemed somewhat boring. I recall organizing a camping trip one weekend, which is something we used to do when kids were smaller. They both abruptly canceled. Sterling was taking them to an event, according to Amara. Callista mentioned that Sterling had organized a networking event for her. It hurt. Yes, however, I reminded myself that grown-ups were capable of making their own decisions. Then the questioning began. At first, they made brief remarks about genetics and who they took after Leona, who seemed to have been telling them stories. Amara gave me a call one evening. Her voice was tentative. She inquired as to whether I had not informed them anything about their mother from the period before to the divorce. I questioned her about her meaning. She claimed that Leona now thinks someone else might be their biological father, and that their mother had informed them she had an affair long before Leona and I broke up. I was surprised. We had our share of issues, Leona and I. However, I never questioned whether the girls were truly my. Amara said Sterling had participated in these discussions. He had reportedly stated that he could lawfully adopt them as adults for inheritance planning and tax purposes. According to him, it would firmly establish their place in the family that is his and Leona's new family. Callista and Amara began speaking words I had never heard them use before, such as the need for emotional closure regarding their genuine heritage and the current family structure. During our marriage, Leona had a nasty temper. She might get irascible yelling and hurling objects when things didn't go her way. Once, when Amara was around 5 years old, I recall, she had been promised a spectacular puppet show by Leona. A friend called Leona the day before to invite her to spend the weekend in the city. They forgot about the puppet show. Leona became furious when I attempted to explain to her how upset Amara would be. "I'm holding her back," she said. Amara felt frightened. Leona was that person. Promises shattered and all the turmoil. It felt like history was being repeated when she reappeared this time with Sterling, but from a different perspective. In the past, she would simply vanish. In a manner, she was attempting to bring them along now from a particular period in the girls' adolescence. Leona was scheduled to take them shopping for school supplies. She agreed to bring half the money, but she arrived 3 hours late smelling of wine. Callista subtly inquired as to whether they would still be able to obtain the sneakers she desired. Leona lost her temper. She screamed that they were unappreciative and that she had to give up a lot to see them. They were crying when she threw her money on the kitchen table and hurried out. The following day, I took them shopping. That was the trend. Large gestures, drama followed by disappointment. At least in public, Sterling seemed to cover over her flaws. But underneath the entitlement persisted, and it was obvious that she was taking use of him and his money to devalue the ladies. A few weeks following Amara's phone call, the major altercation took place. They requested to visit. Both of them. On my old couch they sat. At first, Amara spoke most of the time. Callista merely gazed at her palms. Amara reiterated what Leona had told them, namely that Leona had an affair prior to Callista and another one around the time Amara was conceived. Leona was pretty sure I wasn't the father of their children. She claimed that Leona wanted to put things right because she was deeply upset by this discovery. Callista then spoke up. She claimed that Sterling had made it clear that adopting them would make inheritance easier. He reportedly informed them that it was a sensible move for their financial stability going forward. Callista explained that it's only for legal purposes such as taxes and other matters. Amara gave a nod. "Dad, it's not personal." Then she uttered those words that truly turned the tables. "Now Sterling is more a part of our lives. With his assistance, Mom is happier, and things are improving for us." At first I said very little, I simply listened. My mind was racing. It finally came to this after all the years and sacrifices. They merely accepted it for pragmatic reasons after their mother, who hardly raised them, and her new wealthy husband told them that I wasn't their father. During a divorce, I got up, walked to my old filing cabinet, and took out a folder. Even back then, Leona had made an attempt to discredit me as Amara's father, most likely in an attempt to avoid conflict or get out of something. Both of the daughters' paternity tests were completed. It was required by law for the custody documents. The official documentation were with me. As clear as day. Callista and Amara were both my biological daughters. In front of them, I placed the documents on the table. The divorce was the source of this. "Paternity tests are lawfully certified," I remarked. "Both of you are my daughters." After taking the top sheet and taking a quick look at it, Amara set it down. Callista hardly glanced. "Those old tests might not be accurate," Mom replied. Amara spoke in a bland tone. "Now things are more advanced," she said. Callista whispered. "If we wanted, Sterling offered to cover the cost of additional testing. However," he added, "what's the point? Who takes the initiative isn't that right? He is finally standing up for us." Their eyeballs lack of interest. The worst thing was that, for them it was not about the truth. It had to do with what they wished to be real. What was practical, what they were being sold by Sterling and Leona. Not even the newspaper caused them to quarrel. They simply brushed them off. They had obviously made up their minds, or at least Leona and Sterling had. As an adult now, Amara said, "Look, Dad, we appreciate everything you did when we were growing up. We must consider the future. We are being presented with an alternative future by Mom and Sterling." After they said their piece, I sat there for a while. They appeared uneasy, shuffling on the couch while they awaited my argument. Perhaps, or to beg, I didn't. All I felt was emptiness, as if a silent switch had simply been turned off inside of me. From the table, I took the paternity records. I returned them to their envelope after folding them. I didn't shout. I was not dramatic. What was the purpose? They had already decided on something. I gave them a look. When my daughters were ill, I had them talk to me about riding bikes as I changed their diapers. I would put in a lot of effort for the girls, and then I would act. I began making calls the following day. I first stopped providing any financial assistance. The little stipend. Callista still got her supplies from me. The city ceased when I gave Amara the top-up for her rent. I then gave my insurance company a call. They were dropped from my health insurance policy. They were grown-ups. They may purchase a car of their own, the loan for which I would co-sign. I informed the bank that I was rescinding my co-signer. It was doable, although it required some effort. Sterling may co-sign, or they would have to refinance it themselves. Years ago, I had opened tiny emergency savings accounts for each of them. Every month, I provide a small amount. I transferred the funds back to my own savings after closing the accounts. I texted them both after that. To each the same message. It was transparent and courteous. "I have received your decision on your family and future," it stated. "You don't think of me as your father anymore. Your adult lives will no longer be supported by me. I hope the best for you." After that, I banned their numbers for a while. I required room. I didn't directly hear anything. They must have been busy establishing their new lives with Leona and Sterling. Months went by. In the interim, I unblocked their numbers. There was complete stillness on their end. I went to work just now. Tried to adjust to the silence when I got home. It wasn't simple. I kept moving forward, but there were memories in every part of the house. Then, gradually, things began to shift. For them, not for me. Initially indirectly based on my understanding, Sterling wasn't as strong as he appeared to be. His primary business suffered greatly. A transaction fell through. I damaged the elegant connections. After Amara's internship, he boasted about the ones that were meant to kickstart her career. It didn't work out. After her internship concluded, she received no offer of a full-time position. Sterling put her in touch with his agency, which lost its largest customer. Her hours were first reduced, and then again. It appears that Sterling and Leona began to withdraw their emotional support for the girls, which is increasingly significant. The funding started to dwindle. All of a sudden, their alternative future didn't seem so promising. About half a year after I texted, the calls and messages began. First small things. A text was sent by Callista. Dad, hello. I wanted to check in. I hope all is well with you. Nothing is mentioned. Don't apologize. Just a gut instinct. A week later, Amara left a voicemail. Hello, Father. It's me. I just had you on my mind. If you wish, give me a call sometime. Neither of them received a response from me. What could be said, and I am currently there. Want a conversation? Following all of their statements. All of their actions following the selection of Sterling and Leona. Their back was so battered after they told me that I wasn't their father, and that Sterling fit them better now that they were both running dry. What would you do if I told them there was nothing to discuss? One update. Whoa, so many responses surprised me. I appreciate everyone reading my tale and leaving a comment. Many of you also sent private messages, which I am grateful for. Simply laying everything out has been helpful. Many of you requested additional information on Leona and the reasons why the girls would have accepted the plan or believed her so quickly. Although it's complex, Leona has a knack of convincing others, particularly when she's feeling emotional. She can be quite convincing when she's having a full-blown breakdown, making false allegations, playing the victim, and distorting the truth. She has always had a lot of entitlement. No matter the cost to others, she feels she deserves what she wants. I believe that she saw Sterling's wealth and seeming success as a bright new toy, and the girls helped to make that new life ideal. She most likely portrayed Sterling as the exciting future, and me as the dull, uninteresting past. A few of you inquired as to whether Sterling was intentionally malevolent. Although he was a facilitator for Leona and undoubtedly saw an opportunity, I don't believe he was a laughing villain. He probably portrayed the adoption as a kind gesture and a means of providing for Amara and Callista. He most likely didn't consider anything more than the obvious appeal. Additionally, he most likely misjudged the amount of work I was performing for them and the expense he would incur if he really had to take over. His goal in suggesting the paternity and tax benefits was to make them appear reasonable and useful to the girls. He assisted Leona in fabricating the story that they were improving their family. Some individuals questioned if the girls had expressed any regret prior to Sterling's problems. It's not a clue. The answer is no. When they resumed their calls and texts, they were informal, as though nothing significant had occurred. As if they were merely trying things out. No, I apologize. No, we made a mistake. Just... Dad, hello. Reading your remarks and giving it some serious thought told me a lot. I came to several realizations. I owe them nothing, according to many of you. I should at least listen to them, many said. I wanted to know if they realized what they had done, if only to have closure. Regarding the shutdown, I was unsure. Their actions, in my opinion, provided sufficient closure. However, they unexpectedly arrived at my residence a week ago. On a Saturday morning, I just pressed the doorbell. Both of them! They appeared worn out. Amara had ruby eyes. Callista appeared to have gone days without sleep. When they arrived at my door, they looked like that. I made the decision to listen to their opinions. Thus, they inquired while standing in front of a mirror. Can we discuss, Dad? I took a while to respond. I simply gazed at them. Amara cast her gaze downward. Callista had her lip chewed. Okay, I said. Enter. 10 minutes are all yours. They were taken aback. They most likely anticipated an argument, tears, or my slamming the door. I ushered them into the parlor. They told me Sterling fit better in the same room. I refused to give them a seat. They stood clumsily in the center of the room as I stood. Amara began. We made a huge mistake, Dad. Callista gave a nod. She had tears in her eyes. We were very foolish, Amara went on. Mom? She was quite convincing. Sterling, too. Everything sounded so wonderful because of him, as if this wonderful new life had been waiting for us. She gave me a look. I think I wanted to think it was true. Dad, I wanted to think that a new beginning could be simple and thrilling. For me, it was about starting over from their real life. That's good to know. Then Callista's voice cracked as she said, all I wanted was to have a sense of accomplishment. Sterling appeared to be very successful. Mom was overjoyed. I pondered. Perhaps this was my opportunity to have it, I thought. She began to cry, not sob loudly, but tears streaming down her cheeks. We had no idea what we were discarding. Not at all. They continued to converse, mostly excuses about how Leona had put pressure on them, how they felt overpowered by Sterling's promises, how awful things were with Sterling and Leona. When Sterling's finances began to tighten, Leona was allegedly making their lives miserable by accusing them of not being appreciative enough. Sterling seemed aloof and unconcerned about their issues. The bright future has rapidly been tainted. I paid attention. I didn't interrupt. Callista didn't get a tissue from me. They were not comforted by me. I simply listened. I pictured nothing on my face. I drew a breath as they eventually wound down and stared at me with fearful, hopeful eyes waiting for my answer. I informed them about this. Even if I spoke calmly, let me try to comprehend your mother, who abandoned you and betrayed her vows throughout your early years. I told you that I wasn't your dad. Her recent spouse, a man you hardly knew, volunteered to adopt you in order to reduce his taxes and complete the appearance of his new family. And you, my two well-educated adult daughters, agreed that this was a smart idea. Both of them winced. I went on. Amara, you claim to have desired a new beginning. A new beginning from what? From the father who gave you everything by working 70 hours a week. You wanted to be a part of my life's achievements, Callista. My sacrifices on your sake. You don't consider it a success. Callista's sobs became a little louder. No, father. It isn't. It wasn't our intention. It wasn't your intention. I interrupted her, still at ease. What were you trying to say? When did you examine and reject the official evidence of your paternity? What were you trying to say, Amara? You were rather explicit when you told me that Sterling now fits in better with your lives. Amara made an effort. Please, Dad. We are aware of our error. We sincerely apologize. I said, sorry, but it's not a magic word. It doesn't reverse decisions. You made a decision. They were your choice. Their story was your choice. You spent decades of your real life with me before choosing them for pragmatic reasons. You categorically denied that I was your father as you stood in this exact room. I stopped. Now they were both crying. Excellent. Allow them to weep. I didn't feel touched by their cries. Your new better life broke apart, which is why you came here today. I said that because your mother is being herself and Sterling's money is gone. Sterling wasn't your entrance pass to Easy Street when you came here. Your safety net with them broke, so you came here expecting that your previous safety net is still in place. I glanced at both of them. So this is my choice, you're right. Something was thrown away by you. Our relationship was thrown away by you. You betrayed my confidence because you voluntarily decided that I wasn't a parent. You disregarded whatever duty I could have had to you. After that exchange, you were practically Leona's daughters when you left this house. Not my stepdaughters, but Sterling's. Your 10 minutes are now over. You can't find anything here. It's not my time, not my cash, not my assistance. Nothing. I gestured toward the door. Return to Sterling and Leona. They were your choice. Accept that decision. Never get in touch with me again. We're finished. Amara appeared as though I had hit her father. That's not what you mean. Were they your daughters? No. I said you were extremely clear, Amara. You're not. I can verify that you are biologically my with the paperwork I have. However, you all rejected that. You turned me down. Therefore, no, you are no longer my daughters in any meaningful sense. Callista was speechless as she stood there trembling and crying uncontrollably. Amara parted her lips, then shut them again. I suppose she noticed something in my eyes. They departed when she took Callisto's arm. I saw them cross the path, climb into his car, the one I helped finance, and go. I shut the door. I was not depressed. Anger no longer consumed me. I had the impression that the air was clear and that a storm had finally passed. I realized that what I said was harsh, but it was the reality as I perceived it. The bridge was set on fire. I just verified that it has disappeared. I have no idea what they'll do. And to be honest, I don't care about it anymore. As many of you stated, now I have to live my own life. The second update. My previous update was around a year ago. Since that last encounter, life has changed. Callista and Amara haven't spoken to me at all. Apparently they believed what I said. Or perhaps Sterling and Leona have tightened their control over them, or they have discovered a different way to deal with their issues. I'm not sure. I haven't made an effort to find out either. That may seem chilly to some, but I put them first for more than 20 years. Every choice, extra work, and sacrifice was made for them, and they opted to assume the worst when given the opportunity. To pursue a fantasy and to reject me because I didn't have enough luster to fit their goals. The day they handed me the paternity documents, my fatherly affection for them dried up. What I told them didn't matter, and all I did at our most recent meeting was reiterate what they had already done. I lead a straightforward life. I go to the plant to work, my old jeans are still on me, I still live in a little house. It's quiet, not another drama. They can stop worrying about their emergency savings, auto payments, and tuition. No more questioning whether they're all right only to be answered with demands or distance. I have no idea what has transpired between Sterling and Leona. Nobody informs me they live in a different city and that our paths don't cross, so I don't ask. Leona is probably still Leona. Her kind of person doesn't change much. Sterling. He discovered that it's not as simple as it seems to save Leona and attempt to purchase a ready-made family. That's it then. That concludes the tale. There isn't a particularly dramatic conclusion, I guess. I'm getting on with my life now that they're gone. I'm doing all okay. We appreciate everyone who listened and shared their opinions. Knowing that I wasn't yelling into thin air was helpful.